The Prosocial event was really designed to bring together lots of academics from different disciplines, but also to be a kind of platform where we're involving non-academics in a conversation about how to make societies better, essentially. So quite often within academic work, we're forced into a kind of a way of writing or a kind of voice, which is very much, well, quite often to other academics, really. And so this was a chance to get academics to think outside the box a bit and to apply their work to real-world problems and to say what they thought were, if you like, key mechanisms for making the world a better place. So if somebody was working in, let's say, criminology, and they were identifying some real sort of problems there for society at the moment, what 2 or 3 things might you do to make those problems not necessarily go away, but to improve social outcomes in those areas? So that was a different kind of event from what we're used to within academia, where quite often people go to a conference, they are reporting on a particular project or some findings that they might have. And this was saying, do it a bit differently. Actually think about what are the next steps, how do you want to communicate with an outside audience? And as I say, not just having academics in the audience, but people from non-government organisations, charities and others who might also have something to reflect on those kind of issues. Most work in the social sciences, I suppose, really starts from a particular problematic and saying, well, you know, there's a concern with homelessness perhaps, or in my case it was about gentrification in London and how households were being displaced. And so quite a lot of that work sometimes ends up being for other academics, really. And we forget sometimes that we need to be communicating with outside audiences. And so this kind of event was a way of saying, how do you pull together a focus on social problems, which is very important to, for example, connecting with policymakers and other people who might have something to say about, well, what can you actually do about those kind of issues? If you're interested in a particular problem, how do you translate that for the lay public? You know, quite often we're talking particular jargon, for example, which can be really difficult for the lay person to understand. So I'm always interested in kind of processes of translating academic work into a wider environment. And so the Prosocial event was a means of also compelling other academics who might not always express themselves. Well, they express themselves very clearly, but not necessarily in a language that other people will understand. And I guess that's the key point. So people, the kind of outputs that we was trying to generate from the event was to say, well, look, you know, write really accessibly, write in a very different sort of way to which we don't want lots of academic references, for example. We assume that you know what you're talking about. How do you take that forward and just say, I'm really trying to communicate with you out there. And what you don't really particularly want to hear is an academic researcher saying, well, I'm a psychologist, an anthropologist, a geographer or whatever, and I respond to those issues in a particular way. You want pretty integrated, complete answers to those problems. So where you're putting interdisciplinary researchers from different disciplines together, you create this very fertile space, I think, where people can come up with new ideas and have a conversation that produces a much more effective answer to some of those problems. In a funny sort of way, you're into politics, really, and people are quite anxious about how they're being perceived. You know, there's sort of allegations about, you know, a sort of left-wing bias within academia and so on. But I think when people are looking at particular social problems, it is about dealing with problems of inequality. It is about dealing with how the economy is not serving, you know, large swathes of the population. So you get into some quite tricky debates, really. But I think what's exciting about the Prosocial was saying, you know, unleash yourself from some of those concerns and just say something that you think is fresh and important.